Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Welcome to Temple Beth Tikvah. We're just a few days after the tragic shooting in Uvalde, Texas, and a couple more days after a whole series of other tragic events in our country. And so we come to Shabbat, and we're forced to pause for a moment, to take a deep breath. Shabbat is holiness in time. An idea, a provocative idea, that we know all too well that our world isn't perfect. Moreover, we know, and our tradition teaches, that our world is broken. But our tradition still tells us that one day a week, we stop, we lishbot, we practice Shabbat. And for many, this seems troubling. With so much negativity, with so much evil in the world, with so much to do, with so much work to do in the world to combat the evil, how can we simply say one day a week, we're taking a rest, we're taking a break? Shouldn't we be out there in the world working 24/7 instead of 24/6? Shouldn't we not naively ignore the real events in the world during the 24, 25 hours of Shabbat? Shouldn't we be out there acting and working? But with Shabbat, our tradition teaches something a little deeper. Shabbat isn't simply a rest. Shabbat is a day on the week where we envision our world as if it's already perfect. Our tradition numerous times connects Shabbat to the Garden of Eden, to the messianic time where all was perfect, where no one needs to worry about economic inequality, where no one needs to worry about wars that we see happening throughout the country, most notably in Russia and Ukraine, when no one needs to worry about their neighbor coming with a weapon, murdering innocent people, innocent school children. Shabbat, we envision a world of perfection. And the idea that our tradition teaches is it's only if every few days, it's only if every week we actually take a break from doing the work of perfecting our world to imagining, to almost pretending like things are perfect in the world, that re-inspires us, that re-energizes us once Saturday night hits, to go back into our day-to-day grind of ensuring perfection. Tonight and tomorrow on Shabbat, we acknowledge the holiness in time. We acknowledge the sacredness that the Jewish calendar has given us, not to naively take a break from current events, but to imagine what a world would be like if we can solve all of the problems, not because we naively think it's easy, but because if we stop imagining, if we stop hoping, if we stop dreaming that our world can be perfect, then we'll be lost. And so this Shabbat, I invite everybody to take a deep breath as we start services and imagine what a world can be like after we've put in all of the work, what our world would be like if it's a little bit more peaceful and if it's a little bit more perfect.
Ozzy. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Thank you for joining me this evening. I am joined by Andrew, and I would like to say Shabbat Shalom to Aiden and Miles, helping us with our tech. Thank you, Rabbi Daniel, for that extremely important message. I hope we all have space to breathe and space to envision the world as we want it to be. And with that, I invite you all to approach your Shabbat candles as we light together and bring in the light of Shabbat. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat Shalom, everyone. And let us begin with L'chuner Adonai on page 130. L'chuner Adonai l'Adonai nari al-tzur yisheinu nekadma Toda bizmirot nari halo nekadma fanav betoda bizmirot nari halo shiru ladonai shechadash shiru Adonai kol haaretz shiru Adonai baruchu shemo basru miyom leyom yeshuato sapru v'goyim kevodo bechol amim niflotav yalai Adonai, sing praise to Adonai. We are on page 134. Zamru l'Adonai bechinor, bechinor v'kol zimra, v'chatzotzrot v'kol shofar, hariu lifnei hamelech Adonai. Mizmor LeDavid, a Psalm of David, page 136. Mizmor LeDavid, Avol Adonai ben Elim. Mizmor LeDavid, Avol Adonai kavod ba'oz. Mizmor LeDavid, Avol Adonai ben Elim. Mizmor LeDavid, Avol Adonai kavod ba'oz. Avol Adonai kavod ba'oz. Avol Adonai kavod shemo. Avol Adonai kavod ba'oz. Avol Adonai kavod shemo. Ay, yalai, yalalai, lalai, yalalai, yalalai, lalai. Ay, yalai, yalalai, lalai, yalalai, yalalai. Adonai os lemo yitein, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom. Adonai os lemo yitein, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom. Ay, yalai, yalalai, lalai, yalalai, yalalai, lalai. Ay, yalai, yalalai, lalai, yalalai, yalalai. Adonai os lemo yitein, Adonai yevarech et amo v'shalom. Lecha Dodi, let us welcome the Sabbath bride together on page 138. Lecha Dodi likrat kahala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kahala, b'nei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, השמיענו אל המאוחד. אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, ושמו לתפארת בלי תהילה. לך דודי לקראת קהלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קהלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי היא מקור הברכה. מראש מקדם נסוכה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. לך דודי לקראת קהלה, בני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי dedicate one more beautiful psalm to Shabbat on page 140, Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbat, Tov Lehodot L'Adonai. Tov Lehodot L'Adonai, Tov Lehodot L'Adonai, Olezamer, Olezamer, L'Shimcha Elyon, Tov Lehodot L'Adonai, Tov Lehodot L'Adonai, Tov Lehodot L'Adonai, Olezamer, Olezamer, L'Shimcha Elyon, Tov Lehodot L'Adonai, ולהגיד בבוקר חסדך, ולהגיד בבוקר חסדך, באמונתך בלילות, באמונתך בלילות, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולהגיד בבוקר חסדך, ולהגיד בבוקר חסדך, באמונתך בלילות, באמונתך בלילות, טוב להודות לאדוני. We continue with Chati Kaddish. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמתי ורח חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי כל בית ישראל, בעגלה בעגלה ובזמן קריב אמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם ולעולמי יתברך, יתברך וישתבח, יתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי קדושה בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, תמירן בעמל, אמרו amen. I invite all of our online communities to join me as our special minyan for the Baruch Hu on page 146. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach, Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam vaed. You may be seated. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opens the gates, thoughtfully alters the time and changes the seasons, and arranges the stars in their heavenly courses according to plan. You are creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness from light, transforming day into night and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Tzevaot is your name. Ever-living God, may you reign continually over us into eternity. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on evening. Baruch atah Adonai, hama'ariv aravim. Before we go into the Shema, I would like to follow with the words, in line with the words of Rabbi Daniel, and I would like to pray with a melody that is a wonderful reminder of the beautiful things that are in the world, even when horrible things may happen. There is still beauty. I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue, clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? But they're really saying, I love you. I hear babies crying, I watch them grow. They'll learn so much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Dear God, never remove your love from us. Praise to you, Adonai, who loves your people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. We continue on page 154. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אמת. אדוני אלוהיכם אמת. We continue silently on page 156. When your children witnessed you, they praised your name in gratitude, and they accepted your sovereignty. Moses, Miriam, and all Israel sang to you together, lifting their voices joyously. Micha mocha. We are on page 158. Micha mocha. Bailim Adonai. Nedar b'kodesh, nara tehilot, hoseh Thus it is said, Adonai redeemed Jacob from a hand stronger than his own. Praised are you, Adonai, for redeeming Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael. We continue on page 160 with what I believe to be a very important version of Hashkivenu to do right now. Sometimes I lay under the moon and thank God I'm breathing. Then I pray, don't take me soon, 'cause I am here for a reason. Sometimes in my tears I drown, but I never let it get me down. So when negativity surrounds, I know someday it'll all turn around, because all my Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem. Baruch atah Adonai haporeh sukat shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim. The people of Israel shall keep Shabbat, observing Shabbat throughout the ages as a covenant for all time. It is a sign for all time between me and the people of Israel. For in 6 days Adonai made heaven and earth. And on the seventh day God ceased from work and was refreshed. And in order for us to continue our work in repairing the world, we need to refresh ourselves. And that's why we have Shabbat. Please join me on page 164 for the Amidah. And please rise however you may. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. We continue silently. Yihiu l'ratzonim refi v'higyon libi lefanecha. Adonai tzuri v'goali. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, Adonai, my rock and my redeemer. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, bimru. Amen. May the one who makes peace in the high heavens make peace for us, for all Israel, and all who inhabit the earth, to which we say, Amen. Now we turn to page 171. If you have any names, those you are thinking of, and are wishing a full and speedy recovery for, please put their names into the chat. I am thinking of truly so many people.
Jonathan and Maria Kazan, Howard Fine, and all the family suffering from Uvalde.
Please join me for Misha Berach. And now we have a special Devar Torah from the wonderful Rabbi Daniel.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. So we're here this week at the very last parsha, the very last section of the book of Leviticus, the book of Vayikra, the third book in the Torah. And upon reflection, right, we've had the past several weeks reading through all of the detailed lists about sacrifices of the book of Leviticus. We can't help but come to the conclusion of, thank God that's over. Throughout Leviticus, we learn the routine laws of sacrifices, the exact specification of the laws necessary day in and day out at the tabernacle. We learn the grotesque and the very vivid details of each and every sacrifice, what to do in the morning, what to do in the afternoon, what to do on different holidays, on Rosh Chodesh, which type of animals must be sacrificed. And finally, what to do with those animal parts post-sacrifice. Now, again, aside from the obvious ethical question about animal sacrifices that perhaps looms large in the background, there's simply a much less existential problem. This is a boring section of the Torah. There's no way to sugarcoat it. This is not the type of stuff of inspiration, right? We're far removed from the interesting and ethical intricacies of Genesis. We're far removed from the big revelationary stories of Exodus, of us leaving Egypt, of the sea splitting, of us receiving the Torah of Mount Sinai. In Leviticus, we're given lists, we're given details, and we're told what to do day in and day out. Now, in a past class at Temple Beth Tikvah, I brought up the Midrash, the rabbinic teaching, that Leviticus is supposed to be one of the first things we teach young school children once they come into the yeshiva or once they come into the Jewish school system. I can 100% and confidently say to you that if we at Gesher taught Leviticus as the first thing in our education system, we would have no children after the second week. But it seems that in this statement, in this rabbinic idea that you start with Leviticus, that you start with these detailed laws and sacrifices, the rabbis are challenging us. The rabbis are pointing to what I believe they knew to be one of the more boring, one of the more tedious parts of the Torah. And they're challenging us. They're saying, even this part of the Torah should be inspirational enough that this is what we want to use to excite, to inspire the next generation to be more and more involved in Jewish learning and Jewish tradition and Jewish community. If we take a step back, the lists, the tedious things that we have to do, the checklist, if you will, of Leviticus, emerges a much larger question, a question that's far more exciting than any individual verse, any individual chapter, and any individual parsha. A fundamental question that I believe that every single person, both in our current community and society at large, with all of the problems and all of the progress that needs to be made, the question is as follows. What goes in to the creation and the subsequent operation and maintainment of a sacred space? The specifics of the sacrifices, the details that Leviticus is obsessed with. Perhaps that might not be relevant to this conversation, but the generalities is of course relevant to this conversation. Because what we learn from the facts, the day in and the day out of the laws of the sacrifice, one after another, is that building a sacred space takes tedious work day in and day out. That's true whether or not the sacred space we're talking about is the tabernacle in the desert. That's true whether or not we're talking about a sacred space, our community temple, Beth Tikvah, whether it be the sacred space of our country, of society writ large, and what we have to do to push our society towards more progress, towards more safety, especially for those who are most vulnerable. And it turns out that actually the building and maintainment of the sacred space requires work that any individual moment of can be categorized as boring. But what we learn throughout the Exodus to Leviticus shift is that the Exodus model is not the whole story. Exodus is the inspiration. Exodus is the revolution, if you will. Again, big booming stories of excitement, right? The Passover story. We're about to celebrate Shavuot in a week, right? The story of the receival of the Torah, right? These are exciting narratives. These are narratives that can excite, that can inspire, that can shift societies to move to action. The question that Leviticus addresses is what happens after the revolution. In the famous words of Hamilton, we hear, winning is easy, governing is harder. And this is the question that the entirety of the book of Leviticus was addressing. We've already, quote unquote, had the revolution. We are out of Egypt. We're no longer shackled by the hegemonic, by the authoritarian shackles of Egypt. We've already received the Torah. We have the guidebook. We know generally what we need to do to create a just and a fair and an equitable society. But that's when the real work starts. That's when day in and day out, we have to start addressing the details, the to-do lists, the very tedious, the very precise things of what goes where, how to do what, and what to do at the end of the day with all of the parts. One of my favorite rabbinic stories, just because we can imagine so vividly this picture, is the rabbi sitting around arguing about what the most important verse in the entirety of the Torah is. And of course, as one could imagine, if we had 5 rabbis in the room, you get 5 different verses, 5 different rabbis vying for, I have the most famous verse. And if we sat here, we can probably come up with 4 out of the 5, right? We can imagine there was a verse about creation, right? All humans are created in the image of God. This incredible, this morally profound idea that all humans are intrinsically equal and intrinsically holy. Perhaps the most famous verse in the Torah is V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, love your neighbor as yourself. Imagine a world in which we actually lived as if we believed that every single other person in society, no matter how different than us, was as valuable as ourselves. Perhaps another rabbi opines and says, it's of course, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, the monotheistic statement that God is one. But then in the back of the room, we could imagine a shy rabbi raises their hand and says, actually, the most important verse in the Torah is, Et hakeves echad ta'aseh baboker ve'et hakeves hasheni ta'aseh ben ha'arba'im. One offering you shall bring every morning, and one offering you shall bring in the evening. And the rabbi explains, it's not that there's anything particularly special in that morning offering or in that afternoon offering, but a community, a synagogue, a society that knows that they're going to come together every morning and every evening to put in the work, to try to move themselves from simplicity, from banality, to holiness, to progress. That's truly the most important thing. Because it's often not about the top-down, awe-inspiring moments of inspiration that moves us to action. It's creating routines for ourselves. It's being inspired, as in the book of Exodus, and subsequently shifting that into the mode of action, of turning our initial inspiration from something revolutionary, from something revelationary, and turning that into something that can start a slow evolutionary progress that takes time, that takes the day in and day out work. What Leviticus is teaching us is that perhaps there's nothing intrinsically exceptional, inspirational, or even holy in any single offering. So on Shabbat, so on Rosh Chodesh, so on Passover, we learn about what exact animals to sacrifice and how. Maybe there's nothing holy about those details. Perhaps, if we take a more contemporary example, perhaps there's nothing holy, there's nothing intrinsically special about a single budget meeting for Temple Beth Tikvah for the next year. Perhaps there's nothing intrinsically holy about creating the calendar for Gesher over the summer. Perhaps there's nothing intrinsically holy about planning the behind-the-scenes details of how much food to order for a Temple Beth Tikvah social event. But when we take a step back, when we start to view all of these details falling into place, we begin to see how the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. That the small details, the things that are happening day in and day out, are creating a bigger picture that we can't help but see to be holy. And this is the point of Leviticus. Unlike our revolutions and revelations of Exodus, in Leviticus, we spent the past several weeks learning, studying, and hopefully internalizing that what we need for progress is both the booming revelations and revolutions of Exodus and subsequently the important day in, day out, and tedious, but important and crucial work of Leviticus. Shabbat Shalom.
We rise as we open the ark for Aleinu on page 586. Aleinu leshabeach ladon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגור עלינו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על Before we recite Mourner's Kaddish, I would like to invite those who are in mourning to share the names of their loved one or loved ones that they are remembering during this time. And if you can, please put the period of mourning that you are in. If you are in Shiva for 7 days, or the first 30 days, if you are in the first year of mourning, and if you are observing a yurtzeit.
Rita Silverstein, mother, Jim Nonitz, and a yahrzeit for Arnold Ledoux. First year of mourning for Randy Sostock, and first year of mourning for Mark Silverstein's mother and Jim.
And we think of the 19 children and 2 educators that were killed at Robb Elementary in Texas. Please join me on page 598. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divrach hirute, ve'amlich malchute, b'chayechon uvyomechon, uvchaye dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala ubizman kariv v'imru, Amen. Yehe shemei Rabbah mevarach la'alam olmei maya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei dekudesha b'richu, le'ela min kol birchata b'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, ta'miran be'alma v'imru, Amen. Yehe shlama Rabbah min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'el kol Yisrael v'imru, Amen. Oseh shalom b'imromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'el kol Yisrael, ve'el kol yoshvei tevel, v'imru, Amen. You may be seated. Aiden, do we have any announcements? Shavuot. Tell me so I can say it. Yes, Shavuot is approaching. June 11th. I can't hear what you're saying. Do you want to just speak it into the microphone, please?
So Shavuot will be coming up on June 4th.
June
For
4th.
Shavuot, we will have our normal Saturday morning service, along with our normal Saturday morning service. We'll have activities for families in all ages, from 4:30 to 6 p.m. We'll have a sweet and savory contest from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. We will have a Shavuot service in Havdalah at 6:30 p.m. and our Rabbi Asa Memorial Lecture at 8 p.m. And next morning, Sunday, June 5th, we will have a Yiksor at 11 a.m. Most of the services and the memorial lecture will be available in person and online.
Thank you, Aiden. And now we will, I brought it over here. Now we will begin concluding our service with Kiddush, which can be found on page 122 and 123. Vayerev vayivoker yom hashishi, ויחלו השמיים והארץ וכל צבאם, ויחל אלוהים ביום השביעי מלאכתו אשר עשה, וישבות ביום השביעי מכל מלאכתו אשר עשה. ויברך אלוהים את יום השביעי ויקדש אותו, כי בא שבת מכל מלאכתו אשר ברא אלוהים לעשות. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, בורא פרי הגפן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר קידשנו במצוותיו ורצה בנו, בשבת קודשו באהבה וברצון הנחילנו, זיכרון למעשה בראשית, כי הוא יום תחילה למקראי קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים. כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, ושבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת לחיים. I would like to thank you all once again for joining me, for joining us on this Shabbat, and may it truly be a period of restoration for all of us. We will now conclude our service on page 178 with Shalom Rav. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Ki ata hu melech adon lechol hashalom. Ki ata hu melech adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. וטוב בעיניך לברך את עמך ישראל, בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. שלום רב על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. שלום רב על ישראל עמך תשים לעולם. תשים לעולם. תשים לעולם. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Shabbat Shalom.